Welcome to the Boxing Source Midweek Report, where we tackle the latest topics in the sport of boxing here up to this point every single Wednesday. Time to start the show. Mic check 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Man, I'm kind of livid right now because it's supposed to start over 10 minutes ago. And for some reason, this dadgum app is not properly giving me the right camera that I wanted to use. This is not what I wanted to use. I had the thing on OBS, and it ain't even picking up OBS on here. The browser's not picking it up, or OBS is not picking up the thing for the stream, or nothing like that. So this is what we basically got right here, right now, and I'm absolutely livid about it because it should not be this way. It shouldn't be able to happen like this. Like, I'm pissed. I'm more pissed off. I am more pissed off than Lex Luger, all right? Because this is not how I usually do things. This is not how I usually work. This is not how I usually operate. This is not how I usually get down. We got, of course, all of the stuff that's going on in boxing here for this week, okay? And it's almost like I'm not even in the right mood right now because of this thing kind of messing up. Actually had a whole different stream that was set up before this. And then all the stuff that went on with OBS and Rumble or whatever it is that kind of messed up and kind of like has me really pissed off that it actually did this bullshit. I'm pretty much like have it straight up like bullshit. So I'm gonna see about getting a couple of folks on here for this edition of the Midweek Report to talk about this weekend's fights and all that type of stuff here, right? But I'm still like trying to make sure I got everything here, to talk about what we have as far as like the topics on slate. You know what I mean? I got of course, fight week 4, Mario Barrios and Ryan Garcia. We're supposed to have this thing here for the tail of the tape. And so we're gonna see about getting all of that here for what's going on, and also preview a couple of fight cards that are here over in the Washington D.C. area, and also the fight card for Claressa Shields versus Franchon Crews-Dezurn. All right, so we got all of that. That's on the schedule here so far. But like I said, I wanted to see here if I'm able to get people to join in and things like that. So that's what I'm in the the mode or trying to set up right real quick. But shout out to everyone that's able to check in here live or watch live, and then those that are able to catch the replay and everything like that. You know what I mean? Because we got a lot of stuff that we are looking forward to on the schedule. You know what I mean? So, and then also wanted to talk about what went down between Matchroom and Dazn. So we got that also on the slate as well. All right. So let me see here if I could like I said, calm down and everything like that, because like this thing is supposed to be on OBS, because you usually don't see me like in this view. It's usually a different view. You have the background and all that type of stuff here, but for some reason it's not even picking this stuff up, and it has me like really upset because it's supposed to work like no problem. After this is all done, I'm gonna figure out why it's on this foolishness. Because all it has to do is just pick up all the virtual cameras or all the cameras that are being used, and it doesn't have the one that I want to use. It's crazy that it would actually do that. But with that being said, we're gonna go ahead and try to get through this thing here with the midweek report. Okay. Now, like I said, February 21st, very busy here on this thing, and oh boy, I think I saw something here in reference to a tweet from one fighter, so to speak, one fighter. But I'm gonna just say that one particular fighter made a post on Twitter, or a post was made on Twitter that has a fighter tied to it. I'm gonna just say that. Outside of that, we yeah, it's just wild. All right. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and get this thing set up here. All right. So we got Ryan Garcia going after another world title. This time against Mario Barrios, WBC welterweight title. Okay. Um, so a number of people kind of like didn't expect this, so to speak. But hey, we're days away from it finally being here. Okay. So, we got the whole thing here with the tail of the tape. You got Mario Barrios, of course, as the world champion. He did have two of those fights while holding the WBC welterweight championship. In both of those fights, he ended up having a draw. Okay. Of course, he had the draw against Abel Ramos, and then he had the draw against Emmanuel Dapijan Pacquiao. Okay. That being said, we got this thing here, and Barrios, was coming in as an underdog. Looks like here. So we got this thing for him being an underdog. I wanted to see if I could pull that up too. You know what I mean? That they got Barrios at a 2-1 underdog in some books, while they got Ryan Garcia as like almost a 3-1 favorite. Yeah, that's crazy work. That's crazy work. But we go to the tail of the tape there, you know what I'm saying? What we got here, I wanted to see if I'm able to share this stuff because, like I said, I mean, all of this stuff had been bugging, here so far. But goodness, man, like it shouldn't be this daggum difficult, bro. Like, just go ahead and share this thing. All right. Like, let's see here if we got it. Okay, cool. It's all this thing has been tripping. All right. So we got Mario Barrios, of course, there with a record of 29 wins, 2 losses, and the 2 draws that I mentioned. Okay. He's there at 6 feet with a reach of 71. Okay. Hailing from San Antonio, Texas. All right. 33 total bouts. They're in the welterweight division. You see, like, kind of like the rankings there from BoxRec in their, point system and stuff like that. Okay. Um, they're at 30 years old. Like I said, orthodox stance. They're at 6 feet. Okay. In comparison, you're gonna have Ryan Garcia. There that is at a height at 5'8" with a reach of 70 and is at 27 years old. Okay. They actually, BoxRec actually has Ryan Garcia above Mario Barrios, despite Mario Barrios being the WBC champion, despite Mario Barrios having a more, extensive time there in the welterweight division. And even though Ryan Garcia, in his last 4 fights, has a record of 1 win, 2 losses, and 1 no contest. Of course, with the Devin Haney fight, as you see right there, right? All right, bet. So now you got the whole thing there with Mario Barrios against Ryan Garcia. As I said, Barrios is there as the taller fighter there with a significant height advantage there at 6 feet in comparison to Ryan Garcia. They're listed at 5'8" and a half, probably like 5'9". It had the reach at 71 for Mario Barrios and a reach of 70 there for Ryan Garcia. Now, the thing about it is, uh, oh, I'm saying that the thing is with Ryan Garcia, he has a number of fights there, and as I mentioned, he's lost two of his previous four. He has one no contest and then one win. Okay. And as we see there, that one win was against Oscar Duarte, there within that 140 to 147 tweener type thing. Okay. So I don't know if that was like at a catch weight type of thing or whatever it is, but hey, we see Oscar Duarte on this same card that's going to be competing for the IBF super lightweight title. So when you got this thing here with Ryan Garcia, we got to see like how he's going to fare here in this bout against Mario Barrios. Of course, one of the biggest backstories of this particular fight is with Mario Barrios having Joe Goosen in his corner. For Ryan Garcia, he's back with his father and with Canelo team, so to speak, there. You know what I mean? So you do have it there with Eddie Reynoso and Garcia's father there in the corner for Ryan Garcia. And for Mario Barrios, having Joe Goose in his corner, after having Bob Santos in the corner for the past couple of fights, past few fights, this is going to be interesting. We've heard a few things in reference to Mario Barrios being out there with Joe Goosen. That he's had to do some good amount of work, over this camp, and he's actually been in camp longer than Ryan Garcia. Because remember when people had been initially buzzing about this particular fight, they didn't know if they were going to actually have it announced. Ryan Garcia wasn't reportedly in camp yet before they had like officially announced his fight, while Mario Barrios was basically in camp already. Like if y'all remember back in December 6th when they had that fight card in San Antonio, of course, with Barrios being from San Antonio, he was out there and they had a segment there with Mario Barrios, and they didn't like officially announce that fight as of that time. But Mario Barrios had made that statement that he was going to be there with Joe Goosen, and he already been in the gym with Joe Goosen. So he's basically been in camp for the 8 weeks that you would kind of like say for fighters to get him to prepare for their fights, against their opponents. For Ryan Garcia, it's kind of been a little different. You know what I mean? So we had to see like how all of this is going to shape up here on this for this upcoming fight, because when you see Mario Barrios, right? At least for me, I'm gonna kind of like switch this back up here real quick. So let me see if I could, just hit that. All right. So for Mario Barrios, right? Like I said, he's there as a much taller fighter, but he has what I would say spurts, so to speak, right? I've been able to see him in action against Tank Davis, right? Against Jordanis Ugas, against Fabian Maidana, before he had the bouts against Abel Ramos and Manny Pacquiao, right? Now, the thing is that at times he'll use his measurements there 6 feet, fully at 6 feet, and the reach there at 71. But sometimes, even with his style, it's almost like he, doesn't necessarily, just keep that jab flowing, keep that jab pumping, have his opponent have to reset, because he's not necessarily like of course, like an active mover with his feet. And sometimes he doesn't move when he has to. With someone like him at 6 feet and having a reach, you don't have to like move around a lot, but you have to at least get out of range, so to speak, right? So, a lot of times, people bring up like good fighters that have good offense and good defense. Now, what was it? A couple of weeks ago, you had Shakur Stevenson in action against Teofimo Lopez, and Shakur Stevenson is known for being able to gauge the distance against his opponent pretty much at all times. Now, he doesn't have to be the taller fighter, have to have the longer reach, or have to be the faster fighter, or whatever it is, right? But he just knows where his opponent is at all times in that ring. So wherever his opponent goes with his feet, he knows either to take a half step back, a step over to the left, a step over to the right, so that even when his opponent is ready to attack with their hands, either Shakur Stevenson would be out of range or he'll be able to block or slide. Now for Mario Barrios, he isn't going to have that type of defense, of course, but he needs to have some type of offense to where he will be able to utilize his reach against someone like a Ryan Garcia. Is it that significant over Ryan Garcia in this one? Not from the tail of the tape, but he's going to have to at least try that here early against Ryan Garcia. You know, now for Ryan Garcia on the flip side, a lot of people know with Ryan Garcia, he's fast twitch, pretty much like reacts on instinct, almost as like a counter puncher, but he knows that he can be faster than just about everybody he's in the ring against, with the exception of what? Tank Davis, right? So, for him, it's basically like he might go in there with the confidence of, I know that I'm much faster than Mario Barrios, one, and then two, maybe he's not going to be able to properly hurt me at this stage, because you got Mario Barrios there in his 29 wins. 18 of those wins are by way of knockout, and remember, he has been coming up from like 140 pounds, and he's been lighter than that in his professional career when I'm talking about Mario Barrios, while you got Ryan Garcia, who's been there at 130, 135 as well. So they basically had that same instance of them like getting up to where they need to get to, as far as like being at 130, 135, 140, and now here at 147. Okay, so they're basically around pretty much like around that same, I wouldn't necessarily say that same build, of course, because I mean Ryan Garcia's whatever, you could make whatever you want with that, you know what I mean. But you could say that for either fighter, come fight night, they're not going to be. At least I don't think either one of them is going to be significantly, larger or whatever it is. You know what I mean? So that's the thing on that. Man, I don't know why. Like, hey, folks, like hit me up on all this type of stuff, man, and all that noise right now, man. But like I said, for Ryan Garcia, I like to see like how he's been doing while being back there with Eddie Reynoso. Of course, with Reynoso, he's been there from like the start of his career up to a certain point. Then we had Joe Goosen in his corner. Then he had Derek James in his corner. Of course, you seen Derek James in the last fight that Ryan Garcia had there against Rolly Romero, and he looked completely lost against Rolly Romero. So a number of fight fans want to see like, okay, which version of Ryan Garcia are we going to see? Are we going to see the one that was like kind of timid against Rolly Romero, or are we going to see someone that's going to be more reactionary to what the fighter does, like in the Devin Haney fight or in the Oscar Duarte fight or something like that? Now, as far as like that Tank Davis fight, did he have a good start against Tank Davis? Yeah, a little bit, but he got overly greedy in that fight because he was kind of seeing if he could get pretty good with the jab, right? But he was getting too comfortable with the ones and the 1-2s against someone like a Tank Davis, who is like much, pretty much significantly shorter than him. So that's why you saw what you saw with that first knockdown, was that you just seen Ryan Garcia reach, but Tank was just there below that, the duck below that, come back with a counter, boom, catch him. Hey, thing is, With Mario Barrios, he can't necessarily do that. Of course, he's 6 feet. But what he can do is he could try to, use the distance to, keep away from him. Now, yesterday, when y'all was talking with, Coach Ronnie Shields and Brother Joseph Heron, it was suggested that a potential strategy for Mario Barrios against Ryan Garcia was to pressure Ryan Garcia as they didn't feel like he would be able to fight off of his back foot. I don't think that's a good idea. Um, I don't know like where Mario Barrios could basically kind of like fight on his front foot because yeah he's there, he would have the height and he could use his jab and he has a pretty good jab, but he's not, you haven't like seen him like be used to walk down a fighter, try to like basically cut off the ring or something like that. So in order for like someone like Mario Barrios to do that, he would have to be a little bit more active with the jab, and things like that. You know what I mean? Bull Rider says word has it that Barrios tested dirty. I'll send the text on that. I will send the text on that because I haven't seen any posts in reference to it. And and the thing is that if there was like anything in reference to Barrios, I would have seen something. I would have seen something. Social media or not, I would have seen something in reference to that. But as of right now, I haven't seen any news on that. You know, the thing about like both fighters that I was talking about leading into fight week was them trying to get within the weights for 30-day, 14-day, and 7-day, and that both of them, kind of like was teetering around, that limit, so to speak, and that what was it? One of them was over the limit and had to pay a fine. So, we'll see. But the thing is, though, we're in fight week, and usually how we have fight week, sometimes you'll have something with grand arrivals and fight workouts and all that type of stuff. For this fight week, we ain't really seen none of that. All you have is the press conference, the weigh in, and the fight. Okay. So you do have that. Child never fold in the building. Hopefully you're able to you'll get the message that I sent out, man, because I should have, been able to send that joint out there for you. See if you'll be able to join in. Let me see here if this sugar is also working, man. But yeah, I have to see like how when I was talking about that strategy for potential strategy of sorts for Mario Barrios against Ryan Garcia, being able to kind of like fight, fight going forward, pressure him, and continuously pressure Ryan Garcia. In order to pressure Ryan Garcia, you would have to be either very active with your hands or very active with movement. At least for me, you want to see someone that could like probably give Ryan Garcia issues with pressure is someone like a Isaac Cruz. Okay, Isaac Cruz would probably be able to do that. Speaking of someone that probably could have given me issues, I mean not issues there, but info. Shout out to my guy, brother Joseph Heron in the building. There on the chat, but I got one of my guests here to join in to talk about this fight week and everything like that. Shout out to Never Fold Sports in the building. What's going on?
Yo, boxing source was good with you. Joseph was good.
Man, man, I tried to start this joint on with like OBS or something like that, and it wouldn't even come up. I actually start up a whole nother live stream. That's why I started like pretty late here. You know what I mean? So, but yeah, I wanted to kind of like catch up on what's going on with this particular fight, and then I'll talk about the other fights here on the fight card here. But what are your initial thoughts here about this Mario Barrios Ryan Garcia fight coming up?
I mean, that fight is a pick'em fight. You know what I'm saying? We know Ryan. He a goofy. All he knows how to do is mess up. You never know which type of guy you gonna get. The drunk one, the one that wanna come out to fight, the social media one. You know what I'm saying? It's a pick a fight. And Barrios, his last couple fights, what he been doing? I ain't think that he beat Pacquiao. I thought Pacquiao beat him. Before that, he had a draw with Ramos. A lot of people say they ain't think he won that fight. So it's like, which poison is you gonna pick? You know what I'm saying? So for me, it's a pick 'em fight. And I would love to see Ryan get knocked out. As long as he lose, I'm good with that. But hey, it's a pick 'em fight.
Yeah, pick 'em fight now. I mean, I don't know about the whole thing with the knockout joint, man. I had
Nah, that's what I would like to see. That I don't mean that it's gonna happen.
yeah, it's gonna
You
happen.
know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. But when the fight was originally announced, I was leaning towards Mario Barrios, for the win. But so as you say, with the nickname that Ryan Garcia has, listen, I'm
He's
not.
back on the juice. He's
Hey,
on
hey,
that super
man, yeah,
soldier steroid, bro.
you see him supercharged up, amped up,
No,
like he's Hulk Hogan and Tim Tebow all rolled into one or something. You know what I mean? Like, I'm like, come on, man, what are we doing out here, yo? Because they, were like saying that he could, use, some things here and some things there in order to, get within weight or whatever it is or something. So we'll see what happens because Ryan, if he's there and he's like super confident and as I said initially, if he knows that he's the much faster fighter as far as like hands and doesn't worry about the jab or anything that Mario Barrios could throw at him, then he could just say throw combinations and really overwhelm Mario Barrios there on that front. But on the flip side, I talked about the thing there with Barrios having Joe Goosen in his corner, and the word is they trying to approach this fight like they want to see if they can get Ryan Garcia to fight off of his back foot and
yeah.
kind of like pressure him.
He can't
Would that
fight
be
off
a
the
good
back foot.
idea?
He cannot fight off the back foot. You put him on that back foot, he's gonna go into the silly shell. He gonna be turning around. He got no footwork. You put him in that corner on the ropes, put him on the back foot. He doesn't know how to fight on the back foot, bro.
Well, I have to see if they could do something like that and maybe like what was Ryan Garcia's fight that he had some
Talking about
time
Duarte?
not Duarte, but the Luke Campbell fight, where he got knocked down in the second round off that, But I think it was like something where he just left himself open. I think because that's the thing too, is
Oh,
that
you talking
Ryan
about when
Garcia
he be
has those
pulling
lapses.
back? You talking about when he be pulling back with his shin in there?
Yeah, yep, yep. And he pretty much got caught like that, as I mentioned there with the Tank Davis joint.
Yep.
You know, so I'm seeing that with the lapses that Ryan Garcia has in defense, that does give Mario Barrios some chances there. But the thing with Barrios is he's one of those like what I could say, almost like a Tim Duncan, so to speak, right?
Yeah. He
You
puts
know
you to
what I
sleep.
mean?
He don't have nothing like that sparks
Yeah,
nothing.
that like stands out. That's like extraordinary. You know what I mean? But he just does things, on a consistent basis. So I have to see like how he's going to be able to do here in this instance. Um, but as I said too, he does have lapses as he did against Manny Pacquiao. Like I done seen like Manny Pacquiao pretty much like win six, almost like 7 rounds in a row because Mario Barrios wasn't even like aggressive on any front. And I'm like,
Yeah.
all you had to do is just show that you're the younger, fresher fighter, and you'll be able to overwhelm Pacquiao. That's kind of like what Ugas did at certain points, but yet you couldn't do that against Manny Pacquiao. You know what I mean?
I
So
just I just think that in that Pacquiao Barrios fight, they might have signed a contract to where Barrios wasn't able to do what he needed to do because that fight seemed very compromised and seemed like Barrios got paid. You know what I'm saying? Because it's like I'm looking at the fight. This dude keeping his hands in his pockets. He not even throwing nothing. He just sitting there, just he's just there to be there. He wasn't there like a competitor, somebody that's trying to win a fight. But Pacquiao won that fight for me though.
Word. Yeah, Gorgio says that he picking Ryan Garcia for the KO. Last time he saw Barrios looking good was against the Wash. Sure did in Sugas.
Yeah, but when the last time you seen Oscar Ryan look good, right? Every time he looked good, if we talking about competition, he was juiced up. Now this time around, he acting all crazy. What was all this energy at versus Rolly? We ain't seen none of that. The only time he be acting crazy, be biting his thumb, doing all this crazy stuff is when he juiced up.
And you kind of like seen what was happening in this fight against Devin Haney. What was it like the Oscar Duarte or maybe the Javier Fortuna joint too? Like he was like amped up,
Yeah.
So that's why it's like it's almost like a pick'em type of fight, like you're saying, and I kind of like have it the same way because it's like there's nothing that I'm completely confident on from each fighter. You know what I mean? It's
Because
like you don't see any type of consistency from either fighter.
people coming out trying to pick one or the other as if one or the other been doing better than the other. They basically been in the same predicament, bro. They ain't been winning nothing. So it's like Barrios been getting saved with the draws and stuff, but it's like, know what I'm saying? Barrios ain't been doing nothing. Ryan ain't been doing it, and then he not even supposed to be in this position. What has he done to get a title shot after a loss where he quit? He did not want to win that fight. He gave
He
up.
checked out. He checked out, man. He checked out of that fight against Rolly Romero. That was the crazy part. Like, how do you have like well, they call it a world title fight, but it was for an interim
Yeah,
title.
it was for Reggie Belt.
Yeah, as they said, the Reggie Belt, where it's like one of the lowest like outputs for like a combined 12 round bout. Even with that whole thing with Devin Haney and Jose Ramirez, but that as a main event, that was like one of the craziest things we had seen on that front, man. So that's why it's like up in the air for Ryan Garcia in this. Unless if as he said, he's all looking like Scott Steiner or something. You know what I mean? So we got to see how that goes on that, man. What they got here, man? I'm looking at the odds too for the method. They got Barrios by KO at plus 750, Barrios by decision at plus 320, Ryan Garcia by knockout at plus 120, and Ryan Garcia by decision at plus 240, and a draw is plus 1600. Now, hopefully, this thing isn't like a repeat of Ryan Garcia versus Rolly Romero because if they have that as like a main event for this, oh no, nah, man, folks ain't gonna like it at all. You know what I mean? So it's going to be some wild work if that is the case. Therefore this particular fight. But I'm like saying, yeah, I really don't have that much confidence in either fighter, and I'm not there out there in Vegas either. So, and I'm not gonna basically be there for it. But we kind of see like what's in store for like both of these guys. A lot that's on the line. As they say for Mario Barrios, he has that WBC belt, but it's almost like they trying. It's almost like it's saying folks are plotting to get that belt off of him. Because it
I
says
mean,
like, hey, they get like a whole bunch of possibilities if they're able to beat him. And for
that
Ryan Garcia, this is like last chance saloon for him as far as like being any type of world champion because he ain't never been a world champion yet. And if he gets this win, folks are already saying like how many fights that could be out there for Ryan Garcia with the WBC title. You know,
well, what you just said, they trying to gift him a belt, and Barrios got to come out there and actually fight, unlike he did versus Pacquiao, because he can't even have a split decision win. They not gonna give him that. Know what I'm saying? Because you already seeing Mauricio Salami the way he talking. He actually probably wanted to upgrade Asaran as a WBC champ, but Barrios got the belt. Know what I'm saying? So with everything you just said, if Barrios don't come out there and actually go out there and snatch the win, It don't matter what it is. They gonna rob him because they want this guy as a champ, so that way they could go in. I'm hearing the Connor Benz and all type
The
of different
Connor
names.
Benz, the Devin Haney's, the man, who else could be out there? Or some people that could move up to 147. Shakur Stevenson. Remember, they talk about that as a potential fight. I'm like, come on, man. They just like not even considering Mario Barrios for nothing in this thing, man. It's crazy work. So, as I said, man, I got to see what they're looking like for a weigh-in. They had pretty much been teetering or at the limit for their periodic weigh-ins and the 7 day weigh-in. I think, they were saying like one of them was like over. I forgot if I had the
Are you talking about him missing? I think he missed the 14-day weigh-in,
yeah, the 14. Yeah, I think it
but
was.
they try to lie and say he did not miss neither the 7th or the 14th day weigh-in because it's like they ain't had no proof for the 14th one, right? He showed proof for the 7th day weigh-in. Cause
Mhm.
why would they report that as like he missed the weigh-in, and they also mentioned that he got fined 5K for that. So it's like I don't get why they trying to cover that up. Cause Buddy shouldn't even be at 47 if we keep keeping it a buck. He looking like he's struggling right now to make the weight. He better move up to 54. Cause like at 47, we gonna hear that same Javante Davis excuse. Oh, he was weight depleted and all this stuff. Even with Rolly, it's a bunch of excuses. Oh, he wasn't there, he wasn't focused. But you was focused versus Haney though, right? You was
Yeah,
focused versus Duarte, right? When he's on the juice, he's always focused. Like, come on, bro.
yeah. No, it said the word was Barrios was above the 5%. When they had the weigh in, he had Gorgio was saying Barrios is yams. This is the perfect situation for Ryan Garcia. It's almost like they're having a whole setup
But it's
for
crazy
Ryan
people say
Garcia.
that about Barrios. When it comes to like more, who brings more stuff to the table, Barrios does. Besides speed and that left hook, what does
Ryan
Ryan
Garcia,
got?
yeah, like he don't have like a consistent jab. He doesn't have like set
No footwork,
combinations.
no
No
defense.
footwork,
Like,
multiple lapses in defense, all that type of stuff, man. And yet, they still, as I said, they almost have Ryan Garcia at like a 3-1 favorite. It's like -270 or -260 on some of the books. So
so at this point, Barrios just a tomato can.
yeah, it's almost like they're viewing them as that. That's crazy. It's insane. All right, so that's the thing that we had there for the main event. The co-feature bout they have on slate is the IBF super lightweight title bout. Richard Hitchens versus Oscar Duarte, who I mentioned there was an opponent for Ryan Garcia. This one I feel like is going to be another interesting bout to me because I want to see what Richard Hitchens does here against Oscar Duarte, coming off of his win against George Kambosos Jr., which I felt like was probably one of his best performances that he's had in his career. You know, of course he's there undefeated, 20-0, 8 wins by way of knockout. That stoppage of George Kambosos was like the first stoppage that he's had in a while since like 2022. But this is going to be his second defense of that super lightweight title against Oscar Duarte. As I said, there a record of 30 wins, 2 losses, and 1 draw. Had the win against Kenny Sims in Chicago last year in a pretty good fight. That was actually one of the better fights that they had this year. Probably like one of those sleeper fights that they had there on that card. But he's had a stoppage win over Miguel Madueno, fought Badrzan Akhmadov over in Riyadh. But a lot of people are just leaning towards Richard Hitchens to get this win, man. I'm seeing. Man, I forgot what the line. Well, the line does have Richard Hitchens is around like 5.5 to 1 favorite, with Oscar Duarte at like 3.5 underdog. But it should be something where like Richard Hitchens should be able to outpoint and overwhelm Oscar Duarte, at least for me. You know, they're around, they're at the same height at 5'9", but they have Richard Hitchens listed with the 3 inch longer reach there on something like that. You know what I mean? Gojo says if Hitchens is depleted like he was against Lemos, Duarte can KO him. Now that I could see, like if Hitchens is limited in movement like he was in that Lemos fight, like Duarte is going to be better with the pressure and kind of like closing off the distance and cutting off the ring than Gustavo Lemos is. So Duarte, he really got to watch out for that. Especially with 23 knockout wins in his 30 overall wins that he has. So that's something that Richard Hitchens will have to watch out for. I mean, of course, they're and being Mexico, I think he's gonna just try to walk through a number of the punches that Richard Hitchens has, unless if Hitchens is something where he just overwhelms him with speed in like sharp punches. Oscar Duarte might try to tie him up and make it a rough fight for Richard Hitchens on that front. What do you think about it, Neverfold?
I think it's a fight that Richardson Hitchens should be able to stop him. If not, 12 zip him easy. Cause Duarte, he's like a robot. He's gonna keep coming forward all day. He don't got no head movement, no footwork. He just all he knows is going forward. So Richard Hitchens has gotta make him pick up his feet, move him around. Keep hitting him with sharp punches. Hit him with punches that he won't see coming, and just actually go out there and dominate the fight. Get a KO, a stoppage, or 12 zip him. And I think I can see Duarte winning one or two rounds. You know what I'm saying? Really like 11-1. But besides that, I think it's easy work for Richard Hitchens.
Well, I have to, I have to see what Richard Hitchens does here. I think he has that ability to pretty much, as you say, like do a 12-0 or an 11-1 against Oscar Duarte, right? And we kind of he does talk the talk. That's the thing about him. He does talk the talk. But we have to actually see that happening in the ring. You know what I mean? As I mentioned there with the George Kambosos fight, that's been like his best performance that he's had, for some time, probably again since he had the bout against Jose Zapata in 2023. But from the Gustavo Lemos fight, and then the joint from Leon Paro fight where that was a split decision. We got to see like where Richard Hitchens is at this point, because if he's going to be one of those guys that says that he would want to be the best fighter there at 140 pounds, he would have to show like he's much, much more on another level than an Oscar Duarte, especially with what the other bouts that are on this particular card featuring two high profile fights there also at 140, right? Because you're gonna have the WBA title on the line there with Gary Antoine Russell against Andy Hirioka, and you got the fight there between Frank Martin and with Nahir Albright. So for for Richard Hitchens, especially since it's going to be the co-feature bout, it's going to be after those two fights. So it's going to be like, okay, with whoever wins those fights, I got to show like, okay, what they see from me, that they're going to be dealing with that if they think about stepping in the ring with me. So he's going to be the one that's going to like try to one up whoever gets those wins in those other two fights. You know, speaking of the thing there with that WBA title fight, finally happening after a couple of delays. Whoops. We're gonna have Gary Antoine Russell versus Andy Hirioka. All right. Yes, this is a mandatory defense of the WBA title. That's one thing that I'm kind of like concerned about in reference to the fight in general, is that when you're like a world champion, you shouldn't be having like one fight a year or basically like no fights before you have your mandatory defense, right? Like it would have been kind of okay if you would have had this fight in November, even though that was like 3 months after, well, not 3 months, excuse me. It was 8 months after Gary Antoine Russell had his win over uh, Rayo Valenzuela, right? But for Andy Hirioka, he's had even a much longer layoff. He hadn't fought since September of 2024 against Ismael Barroso. A lot of people saying, "Hey, don't sleep on Andy Hirioka. He's there at 5'11", reached the 74, and is there as a southpaw. So you got southpaw versus southpaw in this matchup. You know, this is Andy Hirioka that also defeated Jin Sasaki that moved up to 147. But he's had, of course, all of his fights over in Japan from 2021 until like recently. He has had a couple of fights in the U.S., but outside of that, it's been almost like the same venue. Like he's only fought in like one or two venues within Japan. So we got to see like what this is going to be here for Gary Antoine Russell. Gorgio says, like, yeah, hopes that Gary wins this. Andy is a problem. He is. Now, of course, one of the stories that was going on over the past couple of days was that Andy Hirioka had some issues trying to get into the U.S. He basically just got there today or something like that, right? Because he had issues there with the work visa that recently got cleared. So I don't know like what he was doing as far as like trying to prepare for the fight and then getting closer and closer to fight week, knowing that he didn't have all of that stuff worked out yet. So I mean I don't know how he's going to approach this particular bout if he still has some things that he got to do in order to get ready, like final preparations or whatever it is. But like I said, this is going to be probably one of the better fights on this particular card because you got like a really good matchup here, of course, with Gary Antoine Russell. His lone loss was to Alberto Puello, who was someone that was kind of like defense first. Used like his reach against Gary Antoine Russell, as Russell had like a little bit of issues trying to properly cut off or cut off the ring or try to cut off, you know, excuse me there. He was trying to cut off Alberto Puello, right? So I don't know if Hirioka has like that type of style. He may be more of someone that could, get, good pressure, good speed, and, has a little bit of pop behind his punch. So that's the thing that Gary Antoine Russell has to watch out for. So I'm looking at the thing there from a defensive perspective. If they got things kind of sharp there with Gary Antoine Russell on that front. Never fold. What you got on it?
Yeah. So with that fight, man, it's gonna be a good fight for like the first 3-4 rounds, and once Gary A start applying more pressure and taking Andy into deep waters, and you feel me, is he's gonna get stopped or knocked out. But to the last, it's gonna be a good fight because Andy, what he did wrong was this: he's coming from all the way from Japan. He should have been here for at least a week or two. He
Yeah.
just landed, or if he didn't land yet, or he's gonna land tonight or tomorrow morning, whatever the case may be. Like we just found out today that he got approved to travel on this side. So it's like
Mm-hmm.
that's gonna play a part, right?
Yep.
Cause he didn't even get acclimated to the weather, to the time zone and all that, and then the flight is like a 12 to 14 hour flight. So it's like all that's gonna play a part. And then he's coming in there with a pressure fighter that's coming pressure all day. Know what I'm saying? And then with him not being a good defensive fighter, he's reckless. Chin be in the air, he's not defensive sound. Know what I'm saying? And this is gonna be the best fighter he fought. Like he ain't fought nobody to Gary A level. Gary A was in the Olympics, you know what I'm saying? He's a former champion, and not too many people even calling this guy out. They not even trying to fight him and stuff like that. So I just think the fight gonna be a good fight to after fourth, third round, and then from then on, Gary gonna keep applying pressure. Is gonna either stop him or knock him out. But it's gonna be a good fight though.
Yeah, I mean, we hadn't seen Andy Hiroka over on this side since 2020, and that was like one of those fights that was in the bubble there at 140 pounds. So it's been almost like 6 years. And as I mentioned before, his last bout was against Ismael Barroso in 2024. That is like a crazy thing to kind of like not have any fights from that point and then get ready for someone like a Gary Antoine Russell. Now, even when they originally scheduled it, that's still an extensive layoff there for Andy Hiroka. So I want to see like how Hiroka like responds within those first few rounds, because we know that Gary Antoine is a gym rat. Regardless of when he has a scheduled fight. So how is Andy Hiroka going to get used to being in the ring there against any type of fighter, and then having that type of atmosphere there at T-Mobile Arena or whatever it is, for those first couple of rounds? It's going to be something where either he has to try to surprise Gary Antoine in those first couple of rounds, or he might get overwhelmed really quickly.
Yeah, and I don't know why would him and his team even take this long to start the process. Whatever the truth is, I don't know. I'm on the outside looking in. I'm assuming, but yeah, that decision, bro. Them not being active. Last time they fought on this side was against wait, Barrosos was over here? I thought that was in Japan.
Yeah, that the Barroso joint was in Japan.
Yeah, that's what I remember.
Yeah, but
Um,
but even this though, right? Like when we see this, remember this fight was scheduled to happen in
yeah,
November.
that
So
fight been going. They've been getting canceled off all type of
right,
undercards.
right. So when it was like in November, and then it got canceled, like what was the process then? Because either sometimes you have it to where yeah, you get like a week or a 2 week or whatever it is, but do you know like if that process is kind of like close to done, or if it's fully done before you even try to make that trip over? Because yeah, if you were having these issues now, what about back then, when it was supposed to be scheduled for November? You know what I mean? Shout out to my guy Tip Bayless in the building. You know what I'm saying? What's going on, man? It's a jet lag on the side. Yeah. You know what I mean? But yeah, for Hirioka, he basically is time traveling, so to speak, because it could be, the next day when he starts, flying out from Japan, and then by the time he lands in Las Vegas, it ain't even caught up to that same time yet. You know what I mean? So I would like to see like
He
how
basically he basically doing what Bacoli was doing, bro.
pretty much, yeah. Of like three, like it's almost like you're fighting on 3 days' notice.
Yep. I ain't gonna lie, that's so unprofessional by him and
Oh
his team,
man,
though.
that is nasty work, man. That's nasty work. And depending on like how much time we got here, man, we might get some words in from one of the fighters that's on this card here, but it's gonna like take something, because it might be like a simulcast, because they like someone has an interview here scheduled within the next, what I say, like half hour, 45 minutes or something like that. So we'll see. But yeah, that's gonna be one thing to watch for reference to Andy Hiroka, as we were mentioning there. That's almost like yeah, fighting off of a few days' notice if you just getting into Las Vegas and you got to get yourself acclimated to the time and all that type of stuff. That's almost like not not kind of close to it, right? That's like when we had like spoke to folks that say like, hey, we get into the like to a city there within like a few days notice or whatever it is, and I'm like, how, bro? Like that shouldn't even be in the cards. Like you should be there like Monday, a fight week. Regardless of the location, you should be there within Monday. You shouldn't
Yeah.
like get in there within a couple of days or like a Wednesday or nothing like that. Like, we had something like, Kingsley Abe said that he got into New York City at like Wednesday or something like that. And by Thursday or something, he was like, he said he was getting sick and because he wasn't used to the weather. Of course, had the snowstorm and all that. And I'm like, come on, man. Nah, you got to be able to. Yeah, you got to be able to.
At that point, bro, people might as well don't even be taking those type of fights, because if you don't get to the wherever you going at least 7 days, I'm talking about not the date, not you landing on a Monday. That's counting. You counting that as 6 days, really. You gotta give yourself 7 days, not the day you land. You start counting, bro. Feel me? Because when you really land, you gotta be chilling, resting, eating, and then the next day that's when you don't rest up. Now you got acclimated to the time zone and all that. Now you start working out. You start picking it up 7 days, bro. You see what I'm saying? So these fighters be taking a risk and then end up like a Cody, bro. So it's like it's not smart, bro. It's not.
Yeah, it's not a good look there if you have like that type of time in order to prepare for your fight, and then you don't get things organized to where you could arrive at that location as early as possible. You know what I'm saying? Shout out to Gorgio. He asked, like, would you say Frank Martin is a top 10 or 15 guy at 140 pounds? Now, we got, of course, there about there on this Frank Martin versus Nahir Albright. Frank Martin pretty much just had one fight at 140 pounds. It's been, it's been some time since he had the fight against Tank Davis, was in the mix there against Francis Barthélemy, had one of the knockout of the year candidates there against Francis Barthélemy. Looked, pretty sharp of sorts, but for some, at the end of the day, they still would say it's Francis Barthélemy though. So now we got to see how he looks against Nahir Albright, of course, who's coming off that win against Kelvin Davis over in Norfolk there, and this is like one of those opportunities there for Nahir Albright, because a lot of people are saying that Frank Martin could potentially be in the mix there at 140 against like a Keyshawn Davis or against a Gary Antoine Russell or against a Richard Hitchens or a number of things. Because I'm not sure if this is like a eliminator bout of sorts, but it seems like there could be a lot behind this particular bout for both of these guys, particularly in the 140-pound division, right? You got Frank Martin, of course, has that lone loss there to Tank Davis, but he's able to have 13 knockout victories in his 19 wins, so 19-1 there as a southpaw at 5'8" with a reach of 68, with Nahir Albright with the reach of 70, their same height, there with the record of 17 wins and 2 losses. So this is like one where it's almost like you kind of like see two styles that may be a little bit similar in a sense. The only thing with Frank Martin is he is like more of the athletic guy, one that could do like a lot of foot feints and kind of like shift off and kind of like be out of range because he's stepping away from you. You know what I mean? So it's gonna be something to look out for. Shout out to Champ Ross in the building there, and yeah, he said yeah, he just landed. He basically just landed, man. And Tip asks, is there a press tomorrow? Yeah, there's supposed to be a press conference tomorrow. So press conference tomorrow, weigh in on Friday, and then the fights. The only thing that we didn't necessarily have here is the like if they would have had a workout, a media workout or something like that. Like I didn't see anything publicized for a media workout, and given that Andy Hirioka just got there, and like that would be crazy work if they would have had the media workout and he wouldn't be able to do that. You know what I'm saying? So that's the thing on that. But for this thing here for Frank Martin against Nahir Albright, I was thinking that it would kind of be in. I thought it was some type of eliminator, but I don't necessarily see it. So I think this is going to be one to kind of like get the winner in those rankings within the sanctioning bodies, WBA, WBO, or WBC. So I think that there's like a lot that both fighters will look forward to in this potential matchup. Number four, what are you leaning towards here for Nahir Albright against Frank Martin?
Man, it's going to be a good fight. It's a good matchup. You know, it's a look that Frank Martin needs. It's a look that Nahir Albright need. I think it's going to be a very close fight. From like 1 to 8, 9, and then from 9 to the championship rounds. I just think Frank Martin's gonna start applying that pressure. Frank Martin fought the better competition. He fought a Tank Davis and other people. So I just think that that's gonna play a part into it. And then championship rounds and Frank Martin finna start applying more pressure. And for me, I see a stoppage. I could see a knockout, but my official prediction is Frank Martin stoppage. But I could also see a split decision win for Martin, because Nair Albright, like a lot of people don't be paying attention to him, but he brings it to the table. He's a good boxer. Like, it ain't too
Yeah.
much that he can't do. So don't be surprised. But for me, I can see a split decision win for Martin, but I'm picking a stoppage for Frank Martin.
Now, the thing there with Nahir Albright, he did have that close fight against Keyshawn Davis also in 2023.
Yep.
That ended up being a no contest, but it was initially a majority decision for Keyshawn on that. We had the bout against Jermaine Ortiz, had like wins against Carlos Balderas and Esteban Falcao, too. But as you were mentioning, there were Frank Martin. He had the competition advantage there against like a Jackson Marinez. Had that performance against Michelle Rivera, Artem Harutyunyan before the Tank Davis fight. So he's kind of like, as I said, he's been able to utilize his athleticism for a lot of the fights that he's had. He was doing a good amount of movement in the Tank Davis fight initially before he slowed down, and then once he slowed down and Tank caught up to him, it was a wrap. So I'm leaning towards Frank Martin in this. He is favored there in this particular matchup. They got him. What I say? They got him at least ranked as high as number 7 in the WBA and number 15 in the WBC. So they got him in at least those two sanctioning bodies there on that front. Right? Chent Ross says, Frank Martin by decision on there. Yeah, so I mean, those are like the four major fights on that card. You do have a lot. There's still a lot that's on the schedule there for you. You do have Beck the Bully that's on there with Belikuziev against Senak Beko, Amari Jones in action against Luis Arias. Man, I ain't know Luis. Just being honest, I ain't know
Wait,
Arias
what
still fighting.
what what card is Amari Jones fighting on?
Yeah, that one.
This one?
Yeah,
I didn't hear about that.
yeah, Amari Jones on that one, man.
He's on the prelims.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be on the prelim joints or whatever it is. How they gonna do it? So I don't know
Where
if
he
it's
at?
regular the zone or
60.
what's that?
He at 60.
Yeah, yeah, yep, yep. 15-0 at 60. So that's another fight there that's on the schedule. You got Joshua Edwards, of course, coached by Ronnie Shields. They'll be on there in the 6th rounder against Brandon Colantonio, and Muhammad Alakel is there against David Calabro. So that is the fight card for Las Vegas on February 21st. All right. I did mention that we have a couple of fights here in the DC area. There. So we have like a number of things that we got. The Davis Boxing Promotions card. It said like also a Jeter Promotions card that's on slate too. So I'll kind of like have like a quick little rundown of those fights because the thing is we supposed to have Michael Fox versus Ray Robinson on the card over at Hanover. That's supposed to be the main event there for that one, and that's a key bout in the super welterweight division. So you got that. You got Derek Scooter Davis is on that card. Jakeem Too Sharp Hutchinson's on the card. scheduled on the card: Josiah Giles, Bria Miller, Nasheed Smith, Brandon Chambers, also, and Ezra Turner. So that's going to be over there in Hanover, Maryland, and then in the what is it, the Entertainment and Sports Arena or whatever they want to call it over in DC. Where the Washington Mystics play at. You're gonna have Greg Sharpshooter Outlaw going up against Michael Lee. He does have the NABA welterweight championship. He is ranked in the WBA at welterweight, so he's kind of like climbing up the rankings there on that. You're also gonna have Stephon Hops on that. Tremaine Fuller's on the card. Chris Glenn versus Eric Rosado is supposed to be the headlining bout on that fight card. So we got a number of fights going on within the DC area on that. All right. Let's see. Yeah. Yep. So that's the thing. And he said Amari Jones going to do what Eric Priest couldn't do, and that's stop him. Right. Shout out to the topic in the building. He's talking about that Lester Martinez versus your Aleem that was announced. Manuel Aleem that was announced there. That's going to be on the Pro Box card. That's going to be a really interesting fight. It's going to be a really interesting fight. Once that happens there too. But one thing I wanted to kind of like touch on also was on the 22nd. We do have Claressa Shields going up against Franchon Crews-Dezurn in a rematch. This time it is for the what they say, the undisputed heavyweight championship there at Little Caesars Arena in Detroit. You did have, of course, Claressa Shields as a multi-division undisputed champion. You did have Franchon Crews-Dezurn, who was a former undisputed champion at super middleweight, currently the unified champion at super middleweight, is able to get this fight here against Claressa Shields. Now, there's been a lot of backstory behind this from the get-go, because the last fight that Claressa Shields had was there in Little Caesars Arena, and after she had that fight, she had made that announcement like after the fight, saying that she was a free agent. And the thing about that was, it was like, well, she's a free agent, and she said at the time she wasn't with Salida Promotions, but that was kind of soon after Franchon Crews signed with Salida Promotions when she wanted to get that rematch with Claressa Shields. So when that happened, it was like almost like bedlam and all types of stuff going on, because now Franchon was like there at the time, like saying, okay, I signed with Salida Promotions for this fight, and now she's saying that she's a free agent. Now I don't know if I'm going to get this fight. Then fast forward, you had Claressa Shields get that lucrative deal there, and is back with Salida Promotions, and so they're able to make this fight happen. And one of the things about this particular fight and the build up to this fight is that there's been a lot of it seems like a lot of disdain for Franchon Crews-Dezurn, in that it's almost like she's being treated as just an opponent, even though they had like their first professional fight together, right? And leading up to this particular instance, you talk about the whole thing with Claressa Shields, and like, not that many people are really gravitating towards her and things like that. Like, one of the folks that's been like good friends with her over the course of her professional career was Franchon Crews. And then you have this fight here be made and done and all that type of stuff. And now it's like, media folks within Detroit are kind of like dismissing Franchon Crews. You had like a little bit of a back and forth between Franchon Crews and Demetrius Salida. So it's almost like, what's going on here is like she kind of, sees or seems like she's being disrespected leading into this bout against Claressa Shields. So it's going to be really interesting to see like how Franchon approaches this particular fight against Claressa Shields. It really is. You know what I mean? You said break down this fight here. You know what I'm saying? All right, I'll check that out. Topic. If you want to join in, let me know, and I'll be able to hit you with the link. Shout out to my guy Thomas Hill in the building. All right. So, of course, you got Claressa Shields there, undefeated, 17-0. Three of those wins by way of knockout. They're at 5'9" with a reach of 68. Okay. Now, I want to see how Franchon Crews approaches this fight because this is going to be there in the heavyweight division. Now, I mean, that's kind of, they're around 10 pounds over a thing there for super middleweight. So I want to see how Franchon Crews kind of, carries that extra weight, going up against Claressa Shields, who, has been a little bit, I would say, more used to, fighting there in the heavyweight division. Of course, she's scored like a knockdown of sorts against Daniel Perkins last year, around this time last year, right? But I want to see like how kind of like Franchon handles this because at least here with Claressa Shields, she actually did get a couple of knockdowns in route to a TKO victory against Vanessa LePage in 2024. So is it going to be the same way here, or is she going to approach this fight against Franchon that way? I'm not sure. Franchon is there, of course. Also has that Olympic background and things like that. Been part of the teams there with Claressa Shields. They're listed at 5'8". Has a longer reach, and of course, has that key win there over Shadeja Green sometime back. She only has those two losses. That first loss there to Claressa Shields, and then majority decision loss to Savannah Marshall. So, she's of course been one of the top rated fighters out there in women's boxing. It's just that she hasn't had the notoriety in the the following that Claressa Shields has. Now here she's kind of like put in as as they say, the proverbial B side, but she's like, nah, I'm going to go in there, upset the apple cart, and you'll get this win and prove a number of these people wrong. I had to check the thing there with the odds on this, right? Because I think they kind of really lean towards Claressa Shields on this, right? Yeah, like it's whoa. I'm just looking at this thing here, right, with the odds. Caesars has it at minus 4,500 for Claressa Shields. 45-1 favorite. A 45-1 favorite for Claressa Shields. And they got, Franchon Crews there as a 14-1 underdog. So it's almost like around 10-1 to 14-1 underdog for Franchon Crews in this particular bout. That's absolutely nasty work right there. You know what I'm saying? So I gotta see like how Franchon approaches this fight, especially having it be her first bout at heavyweight, and how she's going to be able to take a number of the punishment there for Claressa Shields. So we have to see how that goes on that. Let me see here because I wanted to get this thing going as far as like what else is on that schedule, right? You do have, like I said, that is the main event. You got Atif Overton there against Joseph George. Atif Overton is a recent signee there of Salida Promotions. You got, what is that, the WBC USA light heavyweight title there with Atif Overton there. So he's looking to go 15-0 against Joseph George. You got Price Taylor, of course, who I spoke with a few days ago on his card, going up against James Evans. Not no good times. Like there ain't no good times with that. All right. But you got Price Taylor in there against James Evans on it. You're gonna have a number of what is it? You got Lance Smith against Jorge Pacheco. What else do we have here? You got Sardia Simmons against Dylan Potter on there. So a few things that they're gonna, I guess, show on the zone for Sunday, February 22nd. All right. All right, so yeah, that Shadeja Green upset was huge, yeah, because they had Shadeja Green with a lot of momentum going into that particular bout, and initially she was going to be the one built up to fight Claressa Shields there, at least at the time, in the super middleweight division. And then, Franchon Crews was able to get that win. You know, now remember, both of them were at the super middleweight division, and when Franchon Crews was there and got signed with Salida Promotions, it was either going to be the thing there with Claressa Shields, or go for undisputed once again with the rematch against Shadeja Green, with Shadeja Green having to win over Savannah Marshall. And remember, that's what Shadeja Green was looking for. She wanted that rematch with Franchon Crews. But as you see, you're able to get what we have here with Claressa Shields and Franchon Crews. Now, after this, I want to see, what happens with the winner and who would be the next opponent for the winner. If it's going to be a trilogy, or if the winner goes up against Shadeja Green. That's going to be something there to look out for on that front. All right. So, we have that fight card that's on Sunday. So we got a lot of action on Saturday. Got that on Sunday. And hey, pretty good weekend there for the sport of boxing. Now, other thing that I was going to touch on here on this edition of the Midweek Report was that news from Matchroom Boxing. They did have the multi-year deal there with Dazn. Let's see here. I might be able to get this thing here to kind of like go through it. But let's see here. Now I'm gonna just just say I'm gonna just read off a little bit from it. It says Matchroom and Dazn signed a new 5-year deal to extend long-standing partnership. Okay. A renewed deal guarantees a year-round schedule of world-class boxing of more than 30 shows globally per year. Wow. So that's almost like, a couple of shows. That's almost like a couple of shows a month. Well, more than a couple of shows a month. But that's the thing about it, is that with them getting that, you're gonna be seeing Matchroom Boxing content, not just content, but events constantly. And they're probably going to be one of the more consistent promotional bodies that we have out. Probably the most consistent promotional body that we'll have out. And the one that's going to be second, actually, to me, is Queensburg. We don't necessarily have, what's going on with, of course, Top Rank. We don't know what's going on with TGB Promotions outside of, a couple of events that we have coming up, like, for example, on March 28th. So when it comes to the American market, you know what I mean? I don't know, unless if a few things happen on one side, but we'll see. Corcho says, hey, you're going to subscribe to Dazn for 5 more years now. Hey, maybe, hopefully they don't be changing the prices for the premium package or nothing like that. Because if they do, then hey, you might want to reconsider, right? But with this new deal here for Matchroom Boxing, I think it gives them a revamped budget, and I think they kind of have renegotiated a few things in order to secure fights, events, and a few fighters. I've heard about a couple of fighters potentially being signed through Matchroom Boxing, but one of them is really of interest because we got to see if this rumor is kind of having some legs. Okay. Of course, one of the bigger stories when it comes to the sport of boxing is potentially making a fight in the 154-pound division between 2 interim champions. WBC interim champion and Virgil Ortiz Jr., WBA interim champion and Jerome Boots Ennis. Okay. Of course, the big story that has been going on over the past few weeks is the whole thing of a lawsuit being, raised up to Golden Boy Promotions, who had the promotional rights to Virgil Ortiz Jr. So it looked like they were trying to get out of that deal that promotional rights agreement from Golden Boy Promotions. Now I've kind of like went over the whole thing with that lawsuit, pretty much bit by bit, page by page. Okay. Yes, there's been a countersuit to Golden Boy Promotions by Virgil Ortiz. There's been a lawsuit from Golden Boy Promotions to Rick Meridian, who manages Virgil Ortiz Jr. All of that, and all I say is this: if they're willing to go back and forth with this type of stuff, as far as like Virgil Ortiz's contract and his promotional rights agreement, why not just go ahead and have a settlement to get him released from that particular set agreement? Okay. Now, the rumor was that, hey, you could potentially see Virgil Ortiz with Matchroom. Now, my thing about it is, if it's possible, why not just go ahead and go for it? I told y'all what the whole thing, as far as like the promotional deal that Virgil Ortiz had with Golden Boy Promotions. If he has a fight under Golden Boy Promotions, his minimum purse would be $2 million. That was set after he defeated, sorry, Bochuk. So if he gets like a $2 million minimum, then you would just have to have something worked out where you agree to pay him $2 million, or just organize a buyout between Matchroom Boxing and Golden Boy Promotions. So it would just be up to Golden Boy Promotions to say, well, okay, if you're willing to take off Virgil Ortiz Jr. from our hands, this is what we want from him. Now, what would interest me is, how long was that promotional rights deal? It said Oscar should let Virgil go. Now, again, I can't necessarily pull up the whole thing with that lawsuit right now, or at least I can't. Or at least I mean, I might be able to. I don't know. It might be a text or something like that. But we'll see. But my thing is, like, say for example, if Golden Boy Promotions had that rights agreement with Virgil Ortiz Jr. for another, like, say 2 years, that means they would be responsible, or they would have like some type of minimum for those 2 years, right? I see you right there. uh, so here's my thing. If you're saying that you could pay Virgil Ortiz Jr. a minimum of $2 million per fight, and you have an agreement of at minimum 2 fights per year of the agreement, so that's basically your due $4 million minimum per year for Virgil Ortiz Jr. So what are you going to do? Like, work out something to where you just say, hey, just give us a little bit more than 4 million for maybe a couple more years, and you can have the rights to Virgil Ortiz Jr. Maybe they could work something out like that out. Like, say, hey, all right, hey, Matchroom, you want the promotional rights of Virgil Ortiz Jr.? Okay, cool. You would have to pay us $10 million. Golden Boy could say that. They could say that in order to, get the rights to Virgil Ortiz Jr. Now, I know that there's been reports about, hey, maybe they had worked out a deal or something where Virgil Ortiz would get like 12 million or 20 million, with the first 12 million for the boot. Like, I don't know about all that. All I know is what has been out there on record for the lawsuit, and the documents that were presented there for that lawsuit. So I'm like, well, if you're saying that Virgil Ortiz Jr. is getting $2 million minimum per fight, then that's pretty much what you would have to put up for him in order for him not to fight. But I'm still like, hey, we got to find out. I say what, by Friday, because isn't there like some type of temporary restraining order that was put up? Like I had sent like a copy of that joint out there to my guy Never Fold, right? Where it said like Virgil Ortiz Jr. Had did a countersuit of the opposition of the temporary restraining order. So now it's been back and forth with all of that, and even with that, it was like a 3-page document, and Man, I wish I had it on this computer though, right? Tip Bailey says, "Hey, no one is screaming for Virgil Ortiz. Dude's never been a champion." Yeah, that's something there. But the whole thing, as far as like that declaration, man, by what Ed McCarthy of Dazn, who was the chief operating officer of Dazn, he says Virgil will go down as one of the greatest contenders ever. That's funny. Um, the thing is like this testimony from Edward McCarthy though is interesting to me because it's like Virgil Ortiz brought it to the court against Golden Boy Promotions, but the statements from Ed McCarthy, at least for me, actually support Golden Boy's case. It doesn't. I don't think it supports Virgil Ortiz's case. I think it supports Golden Boy's case. Why? Because when they initially put in what they had in reference to the original case, they said, "Hey, we got this part of the deal: 2 fights, at least a minimum of 2 fights per year, and a agreement or promotional agreement or a network agreement with the zone." They had put up and they said that they were under a provisional agreement with the zone. So they have events that are on the zone, just like what happened on January. Then they could pretty much say, "Hey, this is what we present. This is the counter of what Virgil Ortiz is saying." And that testimony that I just looked at and I just said, I think supports Golden Boy's case. But they say something's going to be going down by Friday. We'll find out by Friday. Maybe, maybe not. But hey, all I'm saying is if y'all think that Virgil Ortiz Jr. could get out of this contract, they gotta have to put up the money. And he said Golden Boy is gonna lose Canelo, Ryan Garcia, and Virgil Ortiz. What's going on over there? I mean, I don't know, man. I don't know. One of the things that was interesting to me it was that they had an interview that was on YSM Sports Media recently with Robert Garcia, trainer of multiple fighters, including Virgil Ortiz Jr. Right, but the thing is like, hey, he's there as a trainer. At the end of the day, he's there as a trainer. One way or another, he might get into business, and some things he doesn't. But remember, he said like during the height of what was going on between Virgil Ortiz Jr. and Golden Boy Promotions, he was in the middle of preparing Raul Curio, for a fight there, against Alexis Rocha, right? And then you had the whole thing with Rocha, not making weight, being way off of weight and everything like that. So they had to scramble in order to get a opponent there for Raul Curio. That's Golden Boy Promotions with Oscar De La Hoya and Eric Gomez. And what he was saying was, hey, they were working as hard as possible in order to get a fight there for Raul Curio, and he still communicates with Oscar De La Hoya, communicates with Eric Gomez, and it's still like cordial and everything like that. It's just that with the whole ordeal with Virgil Ortiz Jr., that's just between them two, but it also involves some other person that has some control with Virgil Ortiz Jr. that I've kind of called out multiple times. So yeah. Tip Baylor says, "Hey, chill. They still got Alexis Rosa." Yeah, if he stays within weight. Okay. So, but yeah, that's going to be a really interesting situation for people to follow over the next couple of days when it comes to Virgil Ortiz Jr. and Golden Boy Promotions. And as I stated before, potentially Virgil Ortiz Jr. getting bought out of his contract. We'll see how that goes on that front. But that's mainly what we got so far. Nah, because you come on, Tip. You already know how they treated Rashidi Ellis after he got that win. So nah, they weren't. I don't even want to go into that. All right, I'm ready to wrap this up. One thing that I will kind of recommend here at this time, have to be sure that they have it going on right now. I'm looking for it. We should have. Yeah, that's what I was waiting on. I'm waiting on a link here or something like that. Let me see. Because it's supposed to have something scheduled. Okay. Yeah, it's supposed to have something scheduled here. So we'll see how this goes. Is there any other potential fights we could get in April? Mm, I mean, I don't know. I haven't seen anything else that's been announced as of yet. So, we'll see how that goes. But if there's anything, any updates there, check out the boxingsource.net. We have like some fights that are on the schedule there for April, but it's a lot of those fights that, have been announced already, for April 4th, April 11th, that type of thing there. So, we already got, that already on the Boxing Source schedule, So those heavyweight fights there with Deontay Wilder versus Derek Chisora, Tyson Fury versus Arsenal Bakhmakmadov. We already got those on the schedule. We also had that, of course, recently announced bout April 18th in Liverpool with Callum Smith versus David Morrell Jr. That is going to be for the WBO interim championship at 175 pounds. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, said no. You know what? I ain't even gonna comment on that. I'll talk to you. I'll talk to you off camera about that. How about that? All right. So yeah. So we do have a few fights that are on the schedule there for April. That Z Patino is talking about. So check the schedule on the BoxingSource.net. We'll have updates when we do see a few things here and there. But that's mainly what I got here on this instance, man. Like I said, I mean, I had like a crazy start to this. Like the whole thing with the studio, trying to get my studio thing up for this particular podcast didn't quite work. So I had a late start here. But we had a good discussion. Thanks for everyone that's been able to listen live here to the Midweek Report. Enjoy the fights here this weekend. I will be, like I said, at one of the events here in the area this weekend. So I'm not necessarily going to have like live updates of what's going on in Las Vegas because I will be at one of the events here coming up. So that's what we got. Until next time, I'll catch y'all later. Peace out.